What Gene Kelly kept hidden until his final days reveals a side of the Hollywood legend few knew. Behind his joyful performances were secrets and struggles he guarded closely, truths that only surfaced after the spotlight faded. Let's uncover the hidden story behind the iconic dancer's final years. Gene Kelly was Hollywood's golden boy, a symbol of charm, talent, and effortless charisma. When you think of classic musicals, images of him twirling in the rain or leaping across the stage come to mind. He wasn't just a dancer or an actor, he was the embodiment of a dream. Yet, behind that dazzling smile and those flawless performances, there was a story far more complicated than most ever imagined. Kelly wasn't just a man who danced his way into the hearts of millions, he was a master at controlling how the world saw him. His image was carefully crafted, polished to perfection by the Hollywood machine, and fiercely protected by him. While the world adored him for his seemingly perfect life, whispers began to emerge. Rumors that the man behind the curtain was hiding truths darker than anyone suspected. From early on, Kelly learned the power of image. He wasn't just selling talent, he was selling an ideal. The all-American hero who was strong, charming, and endlessly talented. Studios of the time were ruthless about maintaining that illusion, and Kelly was no exception. He played the role perfectly, but the price of perfection is often a burden few see. What few knew was that Kelly's real life was peppered with contradictions and struggles hidden beneath his glittering facade. There were hints of secrets he guarded fiercely, relationships that didn't fit the perfect Hollywood narrative, moments of personal pain he rarely let slip through the cracks. Even those closest to him spoke of a man who sometimes seemed trapped behind his own smile. As we dig deeper, it becomes clear that Gene Kelly's public story was only part of the truth. Behind the scenes, he wrestled with shadows that never made it into the spotlight. And these weren't small, harmless details. They were secrets that could have shattered his carefully built reputation, and that he worked hard to keep buried until his last breath. This story isn't just about uncovering a few lies. It's about understanding how fame, image, and pressure can twist the life of a man into something unrecognizable. It's a tale of a star who shined so brightly the world couldn't see the darkness behind the light. But what exactly were these secrets? What lies did Gene Kelly cover up, and why did it matter so much? Up next, we'll unravel the truth piece by piece, exposing what the cameras never caught and what Hollywood desperately tried to erase. You might think you know the man who danced through the rain, but the truth might shock you. And as we go on, the story only gets more intense. Gene Kelly's rise to fame was nothing short of meteoric. Born in 1912, he grew up with a passion for dance and performance that would eventually reshape Hollywood musicals forever. By the 1940s, Kelly wasn't just another actor. He was the actor, the man who made tap dancing cool, who brought athleticism and charisma to a genre that often felt static. His name was synonymous with joy, grace, and that unforgettable energy that made audiences believe in magic. But while his star was ascending, the real story was about much more than talent alone. Kelly understood the power of image better than most. His public persona wasn't left to chance. It was carefully sculpted with help from the studio system. Every appearance, every interview, every role was selected to build a narrative. Gene Kelly was the ultimate American hero, wholesome, hardworking, charming, and entirely in control. At a time when Hollywood stars were often puppets to the studio heads, Kelly's image was heavily curated, yet he was unusually involved in shaping it. He didn't just want to be a dancing star, he wanted to be a symbol, a man who represented everything positive and aspirational about the era. This image was critical, especially during and after World War II, when the public craved optimism and stability. Behind the scenes, however, the story was different. Kelly's relentless drive to control his image came at a cost. While he danced effortlessly on screen, his private life was tightly controlled, even secretive. Unlike many stars who openly flaunted their off-screen lives, Kelly maintained a strict distance, avoiding gossip and scrutiny whenever possible. It wasn't just privacy, it was a carefully maintained barrier. Studios loved this. They capitalized on Kelly's clean-cut reputation and carefully edited public appearances to shield any hint of controversy. If rumors surfaced, they were quickly shut down or ignored. Kelly's reputation became untouchable, almost mythic. But as with any myth, cracks began to show beneath the surface. Even during his peak, whispers of hidden struggles floated quietly around Hollywood circles. People speculated about the man behind the mask, wondering if the charming star had secrets he was desperate to keep from the public eye. These suspicions only grew louder as the years went by, fueled by glimpses of tension in interviews and rare glimpses into his personal life. The truth is, Kelly's rise wasn't just about talent. It was a masterclass in image control. He became a living symbol, but symbols are fragile. And as we'll see, Kelly's dedication to maintaining that image meant burying things that could have undone him, secrets that stayed hidden until long after the curtain closed. Gene Kelly's public image was flawless, but behind the scenes, his private life was far messier than fans ever imagined. For decades, rumors swirled about the man who danced so effortlessly on screen, stories that didn't quite fit the picture of the all-American hero. What many didn't know was that Kelly was living a dual life, one carefully shielded from the prying eyes of Hollywood and the public. At the heart of it were whispers about his relationships. Kelly was married twice, but insiders hinted that his love life was far more complicated than the official narrative suggested. Friends close to him later spoke of deep struggles, secret romances, and tensions that never reached the tabloids. Some speculated that he was hiding sides of himself that Hollywood simply wasn't ready to accept. The era Kelly lived in was unforgiving to those who didn't fit the mold. If a star's private life didn't align with a wholesome image expected by studios and fans, it could mean the end of their career. For Kelly, this meant burying parts of himself and fabricating stories that kept the public focused on the dancing and not on his personal complexities. What made this cover-up more intense was Kelly's own determination. He wasn't a passive victim of Hollywood's rules. He actively worked to keep certain details secret. From private meetings to carefully managed press statements, Kelly was meticulous about what the public could and couldn't see. This wasn't just about protecting his career. It was about controlling his identity in a world that demanded perfection. Yet, these efforts came with a cost. Those closest to him described a man who struggled with isolation and loneliness, weighed down by the pressure to maintain an illusion. Behind the charm and smiles was a person carrying secrets that gnawed at him, forcing him to live behind a mask for most of his life. As we piece together these hints, it becomes clear that Kelly's private life was a puzzle he never fully solved. There were tensions, contradictions, and silent battles that clashed with the dazzling star on screen. This wasn't just celebrity gossip, it was a deeper truth about the cost of fame in an era that didn't tolerate complexity. And this only scratches the surface. Behind these hidden relationships were even darker rumors, whispers of personal struggles and controversies that Hollywood worked hard to erase from history. Next, we'll dive into those shadows, uncovering the scandals that studios tried desperately to cover up. The story gets darker, and what happened behind closed doors will surprise you. Hollywood in Gene Kelly's era was built on illusion, and when something threatened that illusion, it vanished quickly, often buried deep beneath layers of secrecy. Gene Kelly, despite his clean-cut reputation, wasn't immune to the dark side of the system. Scandals swirled around him, but almost none ever made the headlines. Why? Because the studios had an iron grip on the narrative, and they made sure Kelly's name stayed spotless. Back then, studios weren't just promoting stars, they were controlling every aspect of their lives. Public relations teams, legal departments, and sometimes even more shadowy operatives worked behind the scenes to snuff out any hint of trouble. For Kelly, this meant that any scandal, no matter how serious, was either quietly resolved or erased before the public ever got wind of it. One of the most persistent whispers involved incidents from the 1940s and 50s, a period when Kelly's career was booming. Sources hinted at disputes, heated arguments, and even some personal decisions that could have damaged his image if exposed. These were the kinds of stories that would have ended a lesser star's career, but Kelly's name remained untarnished. The key to this cover-up was cooperation between Kelly himself and the studios. He wasn't just a victim, he was part of the machinery. There are accounts of him actively participating in damage control, agreeing to keep quiet, refusing to discuss certain topics, and maintaining a strict don't ask, don't tell approach to protect his career. One example was an incident rumored to involve a violent confrontation, quickly hushed up and never publicly acknowledged. No official records exist, but those in the know suggest it was swept under the rug with the help of powerful studio figures. This was the price of fame: hide the messy parts and keep the shining star alive. Beyond personal scandals, there were also professional tensions that went unreported. Kelly was known for being fiercely competitive, sometimes clashing with directors, co-stars, and producers. These behind-the-scenes conflicts never saw the light of day, but they shaped the man behind the image. As we peel back these layers, it becomes clear that Gene Kelly's spotless public reputation was built on a foundation of silence and secrecy. The stories the public never heard are just as important as the ones they did, and sometimes even more revealing. But this raises an important question. How much of what we believe about Kelly and stars like him was simply manufactured? And how many more lies were kept hidden for decades? Up next, we'll explore Kelly's final years, when the carefully built image began to crack and some long-buried secrets started to emerge. What was revealed after the cameras stopped rolling is both shocking and telling. It changes everything we thought we knew. As Gene Kelly stepped away from the bright lights of Hollywood, the carefully constructed image that had defined his career began to show cracks. The later years of his life were marked by whispers and revelations that suggested the truth about the man behind the legend was far more complicated and far darker than anyone expected. During his final decades, Kelly lived a quieter life, mostly away from the public eye. But even then, rumors and hints of undisclosed struggles didn't stop. Biographers and close acquaintances began to reveal stories that painted a very different picture from the joyful dancer who once captivated millions. It was a portrait of a man burdened by secrets he had worked hard to keep hidden. One major theme that emerged was Kelly's declining health, not just physical, but emotional. Those who knew him spoke of a man grappling with regrets and frustrations, someone who felt increasingly trapped by the persona he had spent a lifetime creating. It wasn't just the usual aging star's melancholy, it was a deeper sense of loss and concealment. What made this period especially significant was the emergence of new evidence: letters, unpublished interviews, and personal accounts that had never seen the light of day before. These sources hinted at a life filled with private pain and difficult choices. Stories surfaced about strained family relationships, emotional isolation, and battles with inner demons that no one had fully understood until then. There were also new claims that some of the scandals and rumors from earlier decades had been far worse than anyone realized, details that had been deliberately erased from history. For instance, some accounts suggested that Kelly's relationships had involved complicated dynamics and conflicts that he feared would destroy his reputation if exposed. This wasn't just a case of a few lies. It was a whole hidden life built on concealment. The revelations raised questions about the true cost of fame. How much had Kelly sacrificed to protect his career? How many truths did he hide to keep the world's adoration? And why did those closest to him only begin to speak out after his death? For many fans, these late-life disclosures were shocking, forcing a reevaluation of everything they thought they knew. The man who seemed so joyful and carefree on screen had wrestled with shadows that followed him until the very end. But these revelations also opened the door to a larger conversation about the Hollywood system itself, how it creates stars, but also silences them, shaping not only their public images but their private realities. Next, we'll take a closer look at how these uncovered truths have begun to reshape Gene Kelly's legacy and what it means for fans and historians alike. The story isn't just about one man, it's about the power of myth and what happens when those myths start to crumble. Gene Kelly's legacy has always been wrapped in a warm glow, a symbol of joy, elegance, and the golden age of Hollywood musicals. But with the secrets and controversies emerging from the shadows, that legacy faces a difficult reckoning. The question now isn't just about celebrating the man's talent, but understanding the full story behind the myth. For decades, Kelly was seen as the embodiment of the ideal entertainer, someone whose energy and charm inspired millions. His influence on dance, film, and pop culture is undeniable. Yet, as the hidden truths come to light, fans and historians alike must wrestle with the reality that this figure was more complex and flawed than previously acknowledged. One of the biggest challenges in reevaluating Kelly's legacy is separating the artist from the man. His contributions to cinema and dance remain groundbreaking, but the personal decisions and concealed actions cast a shadow over that brilliance. It forces a deeper conversation about what we expect from our heroes and whether perfection is ever truly attainable. Kelly's life story now feels like a cautionary tale about the costs of fame and the pressures of maintaining an immaculate image. It shines a light on the Hollywood system itself, how it can elevate stars while demanding silence on the messy parts of their lives. His story isn't unique. It reflects the experiences of many who lived under the same intense scrutiny and control. Some argue that understanding the hidden aspects of Kelly's life humanizes him, making his successes and struggles feel more real and relatable. Others worry that these revelations risk overshadowing his achievements, tarnishing the joy he brought to so many. The evolving narrative about Kelly also invites reflection on how we, as an audience, consume celebrity stories. Are we prepared to accept the imperfect truths behind the perfect facades? And what responsibilities do studios, fans, and historians have in telling these fuller, more honest stories? Ultimately, Kelly's legacy is more than just a collection of dazzling performances. It's a complex tapestry of talent, ambition, secrecy, and survival. His life reminds us that the stories behind the stars are rarely as simple as they appear. As we move forward, this deeper understanding challenges us to look beyond the spotlight, to question, to explore, and to accept the complexities behind the legends we admire. Coming up next, we'll dive into some of the most persistent rumors and controversies that surrounded Gene Kelly, those tales that Hollywood worked hardest to keep buried, but which continue to captivate and shock. Even as Gene Kelly's star shone bright, there were rumors swirling in the background, whispers that refused to be silenced, no matter how hard studios and Kelly himself tried to bury them. These weren't your typical celebrity gossip. Some touched on unsettling aspects of his personal and professional life that could have destroyed his reputation if proven true. One persistent rumor involved Kelly's private relationships. While publicly married, whispers suggested affairs and complicated entanglements that clashed with his wholesome image. Friends and insiders hinted at secret romances that never made it into official biographies. These weren't just fleeting flirtations, they were carefully hidden chapters of his life that many suspect shaped his emotional world far more than he let on. Another set of rumors involved Kelly's temperament. Behind the easygoing smile was reportedly a man with a fierce temper and exacting standards. Several colleagues described tense moments on set, with Kelly demanding perfection, but sometimes crossing lines into anger and frustration. These stories were quietly passed around but rarely acknowledged publicly, too damaging for the carefully maintained star persona. Even darker whispers suggested struggles with personal demons. Some sources hinted at periods of intense emotional pain, moments where Kelly's control slipped, revealing vulnerability rarely seen by fans. These rumors paint a picture of a man battling inner turmoil while performing for the world's eyes. Hollywood's tight control meant these stories were never fully explored in public, but they never quite disappeared. In fact, they've gained new life in recent decades, resurfacing in biographies and documentaries that try to dig beneath the polished surface. What's fascinating is how these rumors reflect a broader pattern in the entertainment industry. Stars projected as perfect must often hide deep imperfections. Kelly's case isn't unique, but his skill at keeping these shadows out of the spotlight was exceptional. And while none of these whispers have been conclusively proven, their persistence speaks volumes about the gap between the public image and private reality. It forces us to question how much we really know about the people we idolize and what costs come with maintaining such secrets. But the story doesn't end here. Some of these rumors hint at even more serious issues, controversies and struggles that Hollywood's system actively worked to erase. Up next, we'll uncover those hidden battles, conflicts and crises that Kelly faced but never publicly addressed, and how they shaped the man behind the legend. Gene Kelly's story is more than a tale of talent and triumph. It's also about the conflicts that simmered beneath the surface, shaping the man in ways few understood. While the public saw a confident, joyful performer, Kelly grappled with personal and professional battles that he chose, or was forced, to keep hidden. One of the most significant struggles Kelly faced was the pressure to maintain an unblemished public image in an era that demanded perfection from its stars. This wasn't just about looking good on screen. It meant suppressing any behavior, relationship, or opinion that could be perceived as damaging. For Kelly, this created a constant tension between his true self and the persona he projected. Colleagues recall moments where Kelly's drive for excellence led to intense disagreements on set. His perfectionism sometimes clashed with directors and co-stars, leading to silent grudges and unspoken resentments. Yet, these conflicts were rarely aired publicly. Instead, they were smoothed over or erased to keep the focus on the final product, the polished, captivating performance. But the more profound conflicts were internal. Friends and biographers described Kelly wrestling with feelings of isolation, caught between the expectations of fame and his own personal desires. He was reportedly haunted by the need to keep secrets, fearing that any slip could unravel his carefully maintained identity. Some of these hidden battles also involved family dynamics. Kelly's relationships with those closest to him were complicated, marked by periods of distance and misunderstanding. These personal struggles weren't fodder for tabloids, but they added layers to a man who seemed, to the outside world, nearly flawless. The combination of public scrutiny and private turmoil created a lonely existence, a paradox of a man adored by millions but isolated by his own secrets. Understanding these hidden battles helps us see Kelly not just as a star, but as a human being facing impossible pressures. It also sheds light on the toll that fame and image control took on him throughout his life. Next, we'll explore how these pressures influenced his work, affecting the roles he chose and the way he performed. The story of Gene Kelly isn't just about what he hid. It's about how those hidden struggles shaped the art he left behind. Gene Kelly's performances are legendary, but beneath the surface of those joyous dances was a complexity few could see. His hidden struggles didn't just affect his private life. They deeply influenced his art, infusing his work with layers of emotion that went far beyond what audiences realized. Kelly's style was revolutionary, athletic, dynamic, and full of personality. But that energy wasn't just physical. It was emotional, too. Many experts believe that his personal battles, the pressures to conform, the need to hide parts of himself, added an intensity to his performances that made them resonate on a deeper level. His dances often carried an undercurrent of longing, defiance, and vulnerability. Take, for example, his iconic role in Singin' in the Rain. On the surface, it's pure joy, a celebration of life and love. But Kelly's performance also hints at something more complicated, a struggle to hold on to happiness in a world that demands perfection. That duality, the outward exuberance paired with inner complexity, is what made his work so compelling and timeless. Kelly's choices of roles reflected his internal conflicts as well. He often portrayed characters who, like himself, were caught between expectations and desire, control and freedom. His dance sequences weren't just entertainment. They were expressions of his personal journey, a way to communicate feelings he couldn't show otherwise. His perfectionism and fierce work ethic, sometimes criticized by those around him, also pushed him to break boundaries in choreography and filmmaking. The innovative camera work, complex routines, and emotional storytelling he pioneered were all part of a vision shaped by the tensions in his own life. Understanding this adds a new layer to Kelly's legacy. His brilliance wasn't just technical skill, it was emotional honesty hidden in motion, a secret language for the struggles he couldn't speak aloud. Yet, even with this creative outlet, Kelly's battles remained private, locked away from the public eye. His art became a rare glimpse into the man behind the mask, a legacy that continues to inspire, even as it invites us to reconsider the cost of the perfection we admired. Next, we'll look at the ongoing impact of Gene Kelly's story, how his life and legacy influence Hollywood today, and what lessons we can learn from the man who covered up so much until the very end. Gene Kelly's story is more than a biography of a legendary performer. It's a mirror reflecting the pressures and costs of fame that still resonate in Hollywood today. His life, filled with dazzling success but shadowed by secrets and struggles, offers important lessons about the realities behind the silver screen. One clear takeaway is the danger of the perfect image Hollywood demands. Kelly's career thrived because he fit the mold of the charismatic, wholesome star, but that came at a price, silencing parts of himself, hiding his truth, and living with a constant fear of exposure. This pattern, unfortunately, is far from unique. Even now, many actors and entertainers feel pressured to maintain carefully managed personas, sometimes at great emotional cost. Kelly's story also highlights the role of the studio system, and now modern media, in controlling the narrative. In his time, studios wielded enormous power to cover up scandals and shape stars' images. Today, while the landscape has changed, celebrities still face intense scrutiny and often struggle with invasive media coverage, social media pressures, and public expectations. But there's also a hopeful side. The gradual uncovering of Kelly's hidden life encourages a more honest conversation about fame and mental health. By acknowledging the complexities and imperfections of our idols, we can foster greater empathy and understanding for the human beings behind the celebrity facade. Moreover, Kelly's artistic legacy continues to inspire, reminding us that great art often comes from struggle and complexity. His dances weren't just displays of skill, they were expressions of a deeply conflicted man trying to communicate through movement what words couldn't capture. Today's Hollywood is slowly shifting toward embracing authenticity, diversity, and vulnerability, concepts that might have been unthinkable in Kelly's era. His life story serves as a cautionary tale, but also a call to create an industry where stars don't have to hide who they are to succeed. In the end, Gene Kelly's legacy is twofold: a dazzling performer who transformed dance and film, and a man who bore the weight of silence and concealment. Understanding both sides helps us appreciate his art on a deeper level, and reminds us to look beyond the surface of celebrity to the human stories beneath. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.